Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. It's a little Fajr after Fajr halakha, and what we discussing is our relationship with the Quran. Alhamdulillah. Our relationship with the Quran. So mashallah tabarakallah. Is this something that we often think about? Our relationship with the Quran, and what is our relationship with the Quran like? Is it strong? Is it weak? Is it pretty much null and void? So you meet a new person and you could see a lot of benefit in being in a relationship with them, being married with them. You meet a friend and you can see some benefit in being friends with them. Y'all see the benefit in being friends with each other, right? Same with the relationship. You meet someone and y'all can see the benefits in each other, in being in a relationship and being married, right? That relationship will be nurtured. It's something that you're going to try to hold on to. You'll compromise. You'll let things slide. You'll let things go. You'll overlook a lot of things. And then sometimes you'll realize that you may have been being petty, or may have been tripping, so you will adjust because you want to hold on to this relationship because you see benefit in it. Not using the person, it's just sometimes there's mutual benefits with being with certain people, and having certain friendships or business partners, what have you. But we'll work on these things, even with family members that we may fall out with, and because they family, we'll mend and fix that relationship. How many of us actually view our relationship with the Quran like that? How often do we mend our relationship with Quran al-Karim, with Quran al-Mubin? How often do we focus on that relationship? How often do we focus on nurturing and maintaining a strong relationship with Quran al-Karim? So that's basically what we kind of focusing on, because I remember they used to have I think they referred to them as an acronym for the Bible. And they used to say it was called basic instructions before leaving Earth, right? Basic instructions before leaving Earth, like as Bible, a word for each letter, right? These is your life instructions, as they would say. But not putting the Quran in an acronym. The Quran actually tells you how to live your life in a manner that's pleasing to Allah. It's very specific on what's displeasing to Allah. It also lets you know clearly what gets you into Jannah. And it also speaks clearly on what gets you into the hellfire. And how one should race towards one, run towards one way, and run away from the other. So when we nurture this relationship and we haven't, we may get a little lazy, a little lackadaisical, treat that Quran like you would treat a marriage that you don't want to lose. like a friendship that you don't want to lose, like that family member that you want to stay close to. Treat the Quran like you would treat your money. You understand? Your precious jewels, your car that you in love with, your home that you in love with. Treat the Quran like that. Treat the Quran like it's your job. You understand? Because true success comes from the understanding of the Quran al-Karim. So let's dig into a few points that I put up here to help one rebuild, repair, grow, and strengthen their relationship with the Quran, with this Deen, with Islam. And of course, when I'm speaking on the Quran, I'm also speaking on the Sunnah, because the Sunnah teaches you how to live the Quran out. Right? Alhamdulillah. So, number one up here, try to fall in love with the Quran. Right? Excuse me, I'm a little congested. So, one, try to fall in love with the Quran. Right? Whatever it takes. And see, one thing about trying to fall in love with that Quran, you have to do a lot of tadabbur. Tadabbur, which we'll get into, inshallah. So two, always nurture your relationship with the Quran like a newborn baby, right? Like your wealth. You understand? Nurture your relationship with the Quran. Always work on it. You know, Quran, I ain't seen you in a minute. Let me get into you, you know. Like sometimes when you had that friend and y'all ain't talked for a minute, and then you just, you know, you may send them a text message or call them just to check on them and see how they doing. Man, Quran, I ain't seen you in a month. Let me see what's good with you. And bust your book open and get you some reading in. You know what I'm saying? Fall in love with some particular surahs. Like I could say, the first surah I ever fell in love with was Yasin. That's how I ended up with the name. Fell in love with it. I almost said I was crazy about it, but I don't like to use that type of terminology anymore like that. But I mean, I was head over heels for it. And then later on, when I started reading hadiths and stuff, like I didn't know why I loved it so much. I mean, I connected with it. And then years later, I'm talking about maybe, this was in the 90s, man. Like we talking like 94 when I was in love with Yasin. 94, 95, maybe even before that. Yeah, like 94 when I really fell in love with it. But anyway, when I get to the like 2000 and maybe about like 2003 or 4, somewhere around there, I ended up coming across some hadiths and some things saying how Yasin was the heart of the Quran. And this was also one of the Rasul favorite surahs. And it was considered to be the heart of the Quran. And I consider that a blessing. I thank Allah for that, because Allah allowed me to connect to that surah right from the jump. Like right when I first started reading the Quran with some understanding, as opposed to, which I'm going to speak on, but I'll throw this in. In the very beginning, when I first started reading the Quran, I kind of treated it like reading the Bible. Coming from Christianity, not no good Christian, not a strong Christian, never really believed it. But it was a couple of times I tried to read the Bible because I was told that I should, looking for some type of connection. And I remember as a young kid reading the Bible, and I was like, man, this stuff is just stories. Like, it didn't really connect to me like the Quran did. I was like, man, this stuff is just stories. So I started reading. I was reading the Quran like that in the beginning. So when I really started learning how to read it for understanding and for growth and looking for things to apply, it connected to me like that. So y'all seen it. So number 3, Tadabbur, deep, extremely deep reflections in the Quran. When you're reading it and when you're not reading it. So right here I got a side note. It's a story about a woman. And this was when I realized that I needed to have that type of relationship with the Quran. Because before, my goal was to read it at least once a year. Not even like if it was during Ramadan. I just wanted to make sure outside of Ramadan, I read it at least one time per year in a timely manner. Not like where it take me the whole year, where it took me at least 2, maybe 3 months, but I'm reading a little bit every day, or out of 7 days, I'm reading it at least 5, in a timely manner so it's sticking. So I made sure I did that at least once a year. And I remember when I was counting it, I did that for 10 years straight, where I read it at least once a year outside of Ramadan. And my relationship with the Quran was a lot stronger. So I had heard a story about a woman. I don't know if it's true, because in Dawah years ago, before the internet was real strong like it is now, and you had like the Tabligis, and you had people like Yusuf Estes, which I'm not knocking Yusuf Estes, but they used to tell these stories. And then later on, I found out like the Tablighi Jamaat and the Deobandis and different things in that area. In Dawah, they say it's permissible to make up stories if they help connect with the heart. So if I repeat one of them, I say, I don't know if it's true or not. They wouldn't say that. They'd just tell the story like it was true. And then sometimes some people would take those same stories and refer to them as hadiths. That's why sometimes you had things where people quoting hadiths and they not hadiths and they think they are, or they would be like, the Prophet said, or Islam, this and that, but they be fake stories. So a lot of people need to squeeze that out, squeeze that sponge and get that dirt out of them. So like I'm saying, I heard a story. I don't know if it was true or not, but it was a beautiful story. So it was about this woman from Medina, woman of the past. And they said that her relationship with the Quran was so strong. And throughout the story, I'm gonna shorten it, but throughout the story, somebody would come to ask her something about if she needs some need. But basically, every time she talked or spoke to somebody, she used the ayat from the Quran, or something that should be understood from the Quran. Like they say, every time. Now at the time, like I said, at the time I didn't know that this could possibly be a fake story because the way they presented it. But I was like, oh, like every time she spoke, every time a kid, an adult, male, female, anytime somebody approached her, she used the ayat from the Quran within that conversation or to start that conversation off. So I used to be like, man, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to do that. So I really started digging into the Quran so that I could get to that point where if I'm talking to somebody, I'm talking about the Quran or giving some type of jewel from the Quran. alhamdulillah, with the weak understanding that I have, but trying to achieve that, my relationship grew with the Quran. You understand? So, when it comes to tadabbur, you have two types of tadabbur, two main types. You have spiritual tadabbur, right? And this is truly a jewel, spiritual tadabbur. That's when you deal with the feelings and the emotions of the heart, and you interact emotionally with the wahi, with the revelations, with the Quran and the Sunnah. You attach yourself, you put yourself in those situations. You try to feel it, what you read without going through it. Like the stories of Yusuf, the stories of Musa when he was with Dhul Kifah, and just some of the things like in the family of Imran, Surat or Maryam, like what she was going through, what she was experiencing, you know, when an angel even came to her, you know, just imagining what that could have been like. Those are spiritual tadabbur, and this is a jewel. So also within that interacting emotionally with the wahi, you start to learn how to be intentional with your dua. I'm going to make dua on purpose. So what part of being intentional dua is when you reading your Quran and it speak about some type of reward, it speak about some type of grace from Allah Azza wa Jal, like and some type of a blessing is mentioned. When you come across it, you make dua for it. Allahumma, please bless me with that. Please grant me those type of rewards. Please allow me to be amongst the ones that you reward that way. You understand? And then when some punishment or anger, some people going astray or some deviation upon the people is mentioned, then you ask Allah to guide you so that you don't fall into what they fell into, so that you don't become that type of a person that's earning Allah's punishment and earning Allah's anger. And then you also, so not only do you seek the protection from it, you seek refuge when the hypocrites, the criminals, and the deniers of Quran al-Kareem. Because don't get it twisted, you have Muslims that's hypocrites, you have Muslims that's criminals, and you have Muslims that are deniers of aspects of this deen. So when you read those verses about hypocrites, criminals, deniers, zalims, and just munafiqs, and all the different fasiq, right? When you read about these things, you seek refuge with Allah and ask Allah. You seek refuge in Allah to not become one of those type of people. See, this is when you start to develop that love and that relationship, and then just even pondering on the situation that those people are in, and then and may Allah protect us all from becoming one of them. But just looking at it and pondering, and just being like, wow. Like I heard a imam. I was listening to an imam yesterday, right? And he was doing a live class on dua. And the man said something, man, that was captivating. Where you know how it's talk about how people duas not being answered because they clothes haram, their money haram, their food is haram, these things, their whole lifestyle is haram. And he sat up and said, there's no way I wouldn't even eat a piece of meat that wasn't halal for the fear of my dua not being accepted. Like no matter how good that meat tastes and no matter how good it smells and all of that, I'm not going to eat it, because imagine me having a dua rejected over some haram meat Not as in some pork, some meat that ain't slaughtered correctly. Like this is a point. And how they were saying like a lot of the Chinese and Korean restaurants, right? A lot of them be Buddhist and they believe in like Confucius. Like Confucius was a prophet type of thing. They be up on other things, right? So like even for the people who say we can eat the food from the people of the book, but when you go into these Chinese and Korean, whatever they is, these Asian restaurants, they mushriks. So it's not permissible to eat their meat because it may be slaughtered in the name of Buddha or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Now it's different with, the rice, the vegetables, because this isn't something that's slaughtered, but the meat. So, in terms of that, like going to one of these Chinese restaurants and they worship Buddha. And while I'm mentioning this, because I'm getting to it while we're doing deep reflection, because while I'm mentioning this, see, sometimes when we come from Christianity, we Muslim, but we sound Christian. So a lot of our discussion about religion, it sounds Christian. So like one thing that we do when we see people, we say that person really loves God. But in reality, they love Jesus. They don't love God because they're not praying to God. They're praying to Jesus in a lot of cases. Some of these people, they may be in praying and they may do some type of meditation, but they meditating to Buddha. And we'll look at them and say, they really love God. No, they love Buddha. They don't love Allah Azza wa Jal. So like some of these Asian restaurants, them people, they may be in love with Buddha or whatever deity that they caught up in, but it's not Allah Azza wa Jal. You understand? So that's something that we need to work on, because I'm going to be honest with you. The average Muslim, when I talk to them, they don't sound Muslim no more. And I'm going to tell you, it's two reasons why. One, they don't know what they be talking about. You understand? But they may be using terms like Islam, and then they come on up with different things that they justify. And then they may feel like they was right in it, but they don't be. And then sometimes when you be around Muslims and every time you talking to them, they say 10 things that's wrong, then you come around them again and they say 10 things that's wrong. Sometimes you get to the point where you just start being quiet because you don't want them to feel like, dang, every time I'm around you, it's like you telling me I'm saying something wrong and then you proving it to me. But when I'm around everybody else, nobody else is saying nothing. But that's because they're exactly like you. And if they not sounding like that and they just, Allah said, but Allah never said that, then they sound like a Christian. They sound like a Christian, The Muslims need to start back sounding like Muslims again, intentionally. Not just a Muslim talking, and because it's a Muslim talking, we call it Islam. You understand? So, may Allah help us all work on that, because the Muslims don't sound like Muslims anymore. And I'm talking about in a lot of places, man. Like, I'm not talking about just here. Now, that might not be everybody's experience, but even with, I was listening to another imam earlier in the day yesterday, and he was talking about how leadership, even in Islam, where they're keeping the flock, they're keeping the people ignorant on purpose so that they can never be replaced. I'm always the one you got to listen to. I'm always the one that you got to come to. And they're doing this intentionally, but I love the way he said, due to the state that we are in, we don't realize this, or we can't even see that this is being done. That's how ignorant we are. Just like with myself and people who may view me to be a certain type of way, almost to a fault, because it's like I always had you to depend on. But when they come to me, I don't be like, I always want to be your answer. I want to be the one you call. No, let me help you get like I am. Anything could happen to me. If something happened to me, does your growth stop? You understand? Like, let me help you get like how I am, or how you view me. And that's one thing, like I say, man, you know, you don't want to be that. And they was pointing out how this thing comes from the Christian thing, like how they have, for instance, a pope. Certain things got to go through the pope, your archdiocese, and all these type of things, and they the highest leader and this and that. And they hide information, not like a scholar of Islam, because a scholar of Islam is trying to give you the knowledge. Popes and stuff is trying to dictate what's being taught in the churches, so that they can control their flock. When you control your flock, you control the money. So it was just speaking on how you starting to see this in Islam, and it's intentional. But I've been saying it for years, because you have a masjid and you can't go there and become fluent in Arabic. There's no sense that we have masjids and you can't go learn the Arabic language. Why is that though? Because once you learn the Arabic language and you could get into them books, then you're going to see exactly what they don't know. Some masjids don't even have no classes, or their classes is so low level, you won't be able to surpass them. Because once you outgrow them, it's kind of like this. If the person that you up under is basically a third grade teacher, you're never going to get past the third grade. And sometimes that's intentional. So that's one thing we need to be mindful of, man. As Muslims, we need to get back to Quran and Sunnah, and we need to start back sounding like Muslims again, like with knowledge, with ilm, not just Muslims talking. We need to start looking like Muslims again, right? We need to start acting like Muslims again, because the Quran is the cure for that disease that's in our heart, that's removing the Islam from us on these stages. We don't sound Muslim no more. We don't act Muslim no more. We don't even look Muslim no more. And I mean, like, as a whole. And this is something that needs to be changed, right? So, alhamdulillah. So that's some of what I'm talking about. This is some of your spiritual tadabbur. These are the things you need to get into your Quran, and these things should start to come to you, right? So with your intellectual tadabbur, you got to approach the Quran humbly, like a Muslim. And what I'm saying like a Muslim is because, like I said, when I first started reading the Quran, I approached it like I approached the Bible. Like I'm just finna read some stories that's metaphors, and I'm supposed to get some metaphorical meaning out of it, and what it means to me, whatever I turn it into. You see what I'm saying? But that's not how the Quran is. The Quran is a conversation between Allah and His Messenger. That's why you see where part where Allah is telling the Rasul, say this. And then you could look at it and be like, oh, alhamdulillah, that's a dua. He just told the Rasul to say this dua. Like the last two surahs in the Quran al-Kareem. Both of those surahs are entire, they both du'as. It's not some story or like some, why did the chicken cross the road to get to the other side? One person could look at it and say, he crossed the road because he was going to get something to eat. One person could say, well, he had somewhere to go. Whereas left to your own interpretation, and the Bible is built that way. That's why you could talk to so many different Christians about so many verses, and it's just left to their own interpretation. And then they say something about whatever the Holy Ghost inspired me to remember, or this is what the Holy Ghost gave me from that. And now the Muslims starting to be the same way. You shouldn't have 150 different versions of one ayat from the Quran. You talk to 150 Muslims and they all give you their own interpretation. Lie. That ain't how it's supposed to go. That's why we have tafsirs. So again, approach it like a Muslim, like a student of knowledge, searching for wisdom. I'm in my Quran looking for the wisdom. I'm doing deep reflection, looking for the wisdom that Allah is giving me in this book, not just making up my own way. Like, prime example, when we was younger, because like I say, I became Muslim as a kid, man, 13, 14 years old, so I've seen a lot of different stages of so-called Islam. And one of the things was where, because in the Quran, and it was an Ahmadiyyan Quran, it said that Allah created herbage. And like back in the day, those older Ahmadiyyan Qurans, they used the exact same paper as Bible papers. And those exact same papers was basically the same paper that you used to roll up marijuana. So we used to say, stupidly, it says here, Allah created herbage. The Quran, the pages is made out of weed papers. Therefore, it's permissible for us to smoke marijuana. This was a belief of us. Now, alhamdulillah, I was a little kid. And all it took was for one person to say it. And we all used to say it, but it was a saying that people used to say as Christians. I think it was a rapper or something talking about how they was smoking weed in Bible papers. Now we approaching the Quran, now we can smoke weed in Quran papers. That's our own intellect. See, Shaitan can whisper and trick you. This is why tafsirs is so important. You understand what I'm saying? And then understanding the different types of tafsirs. Like some that's based off of a whole bunch of athars. Some that's just based, which is narrations from the companions. Some based off of a deep understanding of the language, like Qurtubi. Some that was written strictly for scholars to teach from, like Tafsirs Ibn Kathir. But anyway, we need to do that. Approach it like a student of knowledge, searching for wisdom. And don't force it. So like I'm saying, don't force it. It's like what we did. We coming up with our own stuff, so we forcing it. You know what I'm saying? We forcing it. And let it come to you. Let it come to you. That spiritual tadabbur, when you reading certain parts, you make the dua. Oh Allah, allow me to become one of the ones who understand the Quran with the correct understanding. Oh Allah, allow me to not be like the ones who apply their own intellect to the Quran and misunderstand it and mislead and misguide the people. You make these type of du'as, right? And then you let it come to you, right? So the meanings of the Quran is basically in 4 levels of understanding. Alhamdulillah. So in level 1, there's parts of the Quran that everybody can understand. Smart, little kid, as long as you can read. You know, you can be smart, you could not be smart. You could be a little kid, you could be 100 years old, and have a very basic understanding of Islam. There's things that everybody can understand in it, like those who pray, those who give zakat, those who fast, they this. Everybody can understand that. But then there's parts of it that's high level where you really need the Arabic. You need to be proficient in Arabic to get a deeper understanding. And I'm going to tell y'all something that scares me. And I remember I was listening to an imam. I was in a class. And the imam was going through a point, and then he was talking about the hereafter. So he was going to a point where he was saying how it has already, some scholars of tafsirs, well, he didn't start off saying some scholars of tafsirs. He said tafsirs teaches that the hereafter and the day of judgment has already happened. We just haven't caught up with it yet. So I was listening to him like, because I read, I done read a lot, from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. I'm up to like the sixth book in Tafsir Ibn Kathir. And then sometimes it's different parts of other surahs. I done read a little bit on surah, but not the whole book. So I'm like, man, I ain't never came across that. And then I got a Sa'di and Qurtubi. Not all of Qurtubi, but I got a nice portion of Tafsir Qurtubi, right? So I'm like, I ain't never heard that. But other people was in the class saying the same thing. So he was like, and was just saying like how we haven't caught up with it yet. And then he mentioned a hadith where the people was basically like, why do anything if our fate has already been decided? And then the Rasul was basically like, live your life to the best of your ability. And if it's easy for you to do good and be on that path to Jannah, and if for the ones who on that path to the hellfire, it's going to be easy for them to be extremely sinful. And then sometimes you can look at sinful people and you familiar with hadiths and Quran ayats, and you can see like maybe, let's say if it's 10 categories of people that Allah hate, Allah don't love, I'll put it that way, that Allah don't love, and that's despicable and despisable and the worst type of people to Allah. If it's 10 categories, you can look at them and see 7 categories on them. Not necessarily saying they're going to hell, but you can see these signs on them. When you understand that hadith and you start to see them signs on yourself, you should know how to, and you got that relationship with the Quran and the Sunnah, you got to make tawbah and change that. So he, like I said, he mentioned that, and then I'm gonna be honest. When we got out of class, I went to the Tafsir Ibn Kathir, Sa'di, Qurtubi. I started looking diligently for this, right? Now there's a point to this. By saying high level Arabic proficiency, people with a high level of Arabic is going to understand this. You need it. So everybody can't understand this. So even in the Arabic and the English, and whatever is translated in, everybody can understand it that speak that language. But you need a high level of Arabic proficiency to understand certain parts of it. So the next day when we came back to class, I didn't say anything, but somebody else said, I was looking through Tafsir Ibn Kathir, and I couldn't find out what you was talking about. So the Imam was like, there's way more tafsirs than just Ibn Kathir. And there's tafsirs on different subject matters and different things. So he was like, these sets of tafsirs not even translated into English. So you need to understand some Arabic to be able to read the versions of tafsirs that I'm talking about. But then, whoa. When you start to learn a certain Arabic and you get to able to read the Quran in Arabic, you start to read that the way the verbiage is when it speak about the hereafter and future events, it's written in past tense, right? So, and I'm speaking on this because it scared me. Like, even talking about it right now, I get a little funny feeling inside. It's written, Quran al-Kareem, with certain parts, when it's speaking about the hellfire, the hereafter, it's written in past tense. And this is, and the way that the scholars and people of Tafsir explain it, because it's written in past tense like it already happened, like Allah is informing a Rasul what was already said. Like, the people who end up in the hellfire and the other ones was like, yo, what did you do to get there? Like, why are you there? And different things, but it's already, because he said it didn't say. So like in the English, they changed it to present tense, or like it's in the future, but because they can't write it in past tense in English. So like in the English, they will put stuff like they will say, but in the Arabic is they said. So when I came across that and learned that, then I was able to understand the tafsirs, although I haven't read them, but what the Imam was talking about, where some of the scholars of tafsirs say that it's already happened, we just ain't caught up with it yet. Because when you read the Arabic and you understand grammatical structure, a lot of stuff that's dealing with the hereafter and things that's being said and what happened is written in past tense. That's scary. And when you doing that tadabbur, it make you tighten up. It make you more aware of, I need to seek refuge from being one of those ones that go astray. Yeah, it's written in past tense. A lot of it is. So that's scary for me. And then here, like, he's saying the tafsir, the scholars of tafsirs, is saying, Yom Qiyamah already happened. And then, like I say, when you're doing tadabbur, it make you think of the certain hadiths where it say, when you in your grave and you go through the question and this and that, and it'd be like, it'll flip you over and it'll be like, show this individual they place in the hellfire. And then you look and then they let you see where you would have ended up at, but it'll say, because you changed or because of this, you saved yourself from where you was already headed. And then in reverse, some of them would be like, show them their place in Jannah. Like, had they deeds had it been sincere, had what they was doing, had they been up on real Islam instead of some fake bid'ah made up stuff that they was acting up on for 10 years. If it really was real Islam, show them they place in where they would have ended up in Jannah. And then you get to see it and it'd be like, that would have been your place, but you did this, and this. So then you get to look at your place in the hellfire. Like, that's tormenting. So when you read that and it's saying like, it's already showing you where your place in these things gonna go, that stuff written in past tense. Scary for me. So then the third level of understanding, the scholars of tafsirs, they have to bring that understanding to you, right? And then there's certain parts where of the Quran, the understanding, only Allah knows it and understands it. For instance, like your surahs that start off Alif Lam Ra, Alif Lam Mim, Taha, Yasin, all these different things, the surahs that start off like that, only Allah knows the meanings and understandings, right? So let me give y'all a couple of Quran ayats and then I'm gonna be done. So like Quran ayat I want to touch is 10, Surah 10, ayat number 57. And Surah to Yunus. So in this ayat number 57, listen what this say. O mankind, indeed there has come to you a warning. an admonition, some good advice from your Lord. The Quran enjoining, now this is in parentheses, it's referring to the Quran, and enjoining all that is good and forbidding all that is evil. This is the warning. This is the good advice, right? Because the good advice, enjoying all that's good. The warning, forbid all that's evil, right? And back to the Quran part, right? And it's a healing for the disease of ignorance, doubt, hypocrisy, and differences, which is within your chest. That's what's in your heart. And it's a guidance and a mercy, explaining lawful and the haram and the haram. The halal and the haram, the lawful and unlawful things for the believers. So when it say that it's an admonition, an admonishment, we need to reflect on that and understand the Quran is an admonishment. Because I knew an individual that don't read their Quran because they say every time they open their Quran up and start to read it, and they just had a book closed and they'll open it up with their eyes closed and put their finger on it, every time they read it, they read something that go against them. You need to keep reading, because either before that or after that, it'll give you the remedy for that. But the whole Quran, it is an admonishment. The Quran is here to admonish all Muslims. It's here to give good advice to all Muslims. And Allah Azza wa Jal is telling us that. You know what I'm saying? This book is an admonishment. Like I would say, because like, look at the beauty. It's an admonishment from your Lord, right? And it's a healing for that admonishment. And a guidance and a mercy. But it's for the believers. So if you're a hypocrite, if you're up on some criminal behaviors and different things like it explains, you're not gonna get them jewels, because it's for the believers. You understand? The mu'minuns. That's something to reflect on. One more or two more. So you got Surah 2, ayat number 282. Look at this beauty right here. Look at this beautiful ayat right here. And I ain't gonna read the whole entire ayat, but just look at how it ends. Look at how it ends. Beautiful, man. Some of the most beautiful stuff I done read. A real heart softener. And this is what I'm saying about approaching the Quran humbly, like a Muslim, like a student of knowledge, searching for wisdom. Don't force it, to let it come to you, right? Look what Allah Azza wa Jal tells us. Right? Look what Allah Azza wa Jal tells us. The surah ends with, right? Be mindful. Have taqwa of Allah. For Allah will be the one that teach you. Allah will teach you Quran. Allah will teach you this deen. But you got to be mindful. You got to be intentional with your deen. Right? You got to fear Allah. And then Allah will teach you the Quran. Allah will teach you this deen. And Allah is the all-knower of each and everything. Imagine Allah teaching you. And that's why when you go to the hadiths and different things, like it said, when Allah wants good for a person, when Allah loves a person, they grant them with the understanding of this deen. So when you see people and they can't learn it, they can't act up on it, and I'm talking about 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years done passed, for whatever going on, Allah not teaching them. Allah not allowing them to learn it. Whatever they got going on. And then when you read the Hadith, when the day of Yom Kiyama come, and it's that time to go to the hellfire, and they got excuses, and Allah Azza wa Jal say to them, didn't I leave you on earth long enough to learn this deen? So, this is the beauty of it. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was a prophet for 23 years, possibly close to 24, depending on the day that he received the first revelation and the month and time. It could be a little closer to 24 years, right? 23 years and some months. Kind of close to 24 years, right? That means they learned the deen proficiently in 23 years. So if you've been Muslim for 23 years, you should be nice. You should be. You've been Muslim for 30 years and you ain't nice, you better start doing some tadabbur. It's time to start doing some tadabbur. Deep reflecting on Quran and Sunnah. So this is the last one. Beautiful, beautiful ayat. Surah number 25, ayat number 30. Beautiful ayat right here. Because people out the Rasul. Now, you can see like some of this I like how in English they actually wrote this in past tense. So it says, and the messenger, the Rasul, will say, well, no, that ain't past tense, but the messenger will say, O my Lord, verily my people deserted the Quran. Parentheses, neither listen to it nor acting on its laws and teachings. The messenger, the Rasulullah, Prophet Muhammad cried out, "O my Lord, my people indeed received the Quran and they forsaken it. They neglected it." And this is why he's in the company of them. So like some of the examples when you dig into the tafsirs and the explanations, it say like they would compete in learning to recite it and memorizing. But when it came to being able to act up on it, reflecting on it, doing tadabbur, where they would have competitions and who could read it the most in a week, but they reading it without any type of tadabbur, reflecting. So there's a hadith that say a day is going to come, and like the long version of the hadith, beautiful, but I'm gonna shorten it because there's a short version where they just take a portion of it out of the long hadith and say there's a day that's going to come when you're going to have Muslims and the Quran isn't going to go past their throat. They're going to know how to recite the Quran. They might even have the whole Quran memorized, but they can't act up on it. They can't listen to it. They don't listen to it. They don't really understand it. They listen to it for memorization only, right? And the Rasul calling out to Allah Azza wa Jal at that time. And it's also referring to not only the Muslims, but the non-believers who the Quran is here for y'all too, but y'all rejecting the whole deen. These is things to reflect on, because when I be sitting up saying, man, and it took for this, where I never really knew Christians that knew their Bible. And then to be honest with you, it's so changed from the original language and all the different things that even break it down into English. The original is completely lost. When you know about the Council of Nicaea, whatever it's called, and the changes that they made and the compromises and determining what was going to be in it, when you have a Bible with Like the Ethiopian Bible, I think it's like 88 books, and then the Catholic books is down to like 72 books, and then this King James Version is like 66 books. What they took away, what they added, what they wanted to keep, what they changed and rewrote, right? They couldn't know Allah's original words even if they wanted to. But just their basic 66 books, I didn't really know no Christians who really read it and was proficient in understanding it. Because you could throw out certain things in it and it was like they never heard it before. Just like a lot of people who be Bible thumpers, when I bust out the Songs of Solomon, where it start off talking about he kissed me all in my mouth. What? Why is this in here? You read the whole thing. You can't tell a woman wrote this. It even talk about her vagina getting wet. Everything. It talk about sex, how they had sex all night and how he put it down, and the jealousy they had when he was with other women. They had sex in the field. In the Songs of Solomon. What this got to do with deen? With religion? Why is this in here? People be like, when you first tell it to them, they're like, no. Then you bust it open and have them read a couple of lines of it. It's like, whoa. So if it ain't, and then even in the beginning, okay, if it ain't a woman who wrote it, it was a gay man. But it do start to say that, it start to make clear that they was a woman, because they talk about how they was the fairest maiden or something like that. But my point is, they didn't know it. So when I read the hadith, we're going to follow them people inch by inch, handspan by handspan, to the point if they go in a hole of a lizard, we going to go in a hole of a lizard too. And I knew right then, it's going to become a day when the Muslims not going to know their Quran. But now when I do Tadabbur and look at this ayat, the Rasul was even calling out to Allah, saying, man, my people done received this Quran. Right? They done received this Quran, but they done deserted it. They negligent in it. They can't act upon his laws, his teachings. They don't get it. They racing to memorize it. They racing to, they competing to see who could recite it better. But when it comes to understanding and acting up on it and living it, so the Rasul was seeing it and saying something to Allah about it, then what how we gonna see it? You see what I'm saying? So then look what the response was. Thus we have made for every prophet an enemy from amongst the mujrimun. But sufficient is your Lord as a guide and a helper. You understand? So don't you worry about them. you get your guidance and understanding from it. It's always gonna be enemies to this deen, within it and from the outside of it. You see what I'm saying? So, and I'm gonna close on that, but this one last little thing, man, then I'm gonna close it. I was listening to this man saying that when he first came to this country, he met a woman that had learned the Arabic alphabet, and said for 30 years straight, every day, she read from the Quran 30 minutes to an hour. Every single day. Except for when, of course, when she was on her menses. But when she wasn't on her menses, every day she read the Quran for 30 years straight. So he knows she's not an Arabic speaker, so he was like, you know, because there's many different interpretations of the Quran in English. So it was like, oh, okay, which interpretation of the Quran you reading? And the lady says, interpretation of the Quran, I don't know of any. I've been reading this Quran in Arabic because I've been taught to connect the letters for 30 years. Every day outside of her menses for 30 years. 30 minutes, an hour, sometimes longer. You've been doing that for 30 years and can't understand none of it. You ain't never read it, none of it in English to get some kind of understanding. That's mind blowing. How you gonna know to act up on it? So when he asked her why are you doing that, like reading with no understanding, and she said because of the barakats, the hasanats that you get for each letter. You know what I'm saying? And he said a key thing. These people treat the Quran like a talisman. And it reminded me when he said that, because like I said, I've been around a long time, and I remember people used to say stuff like, just picking up the Quran, if you got a bad headache, pick the Quran up, and it'll make your headache go away. If you sick, if you got the flu, all you got to do is hold your Quran, read from it, the flu gonna go away. It'll make your headaches go away. And I remember because I was a little kid. Well, I wasn't all that young, but I was about 17 when I got my first Quran. And I remember I had got a real bad headache. Now peep this out. I got the headache from a hangover. Too much kicking it the night before. So I got a real bad headache, man. The first thing I did was start trying to read the Quran and hold it all on my head, and my headache didn't go away. Now, for some people who believe that's from Islam, and then their headache ain't going away, because this is what I'm mentioning this because I see people leave Islam because they've been told a whole bunch of fake mystical stuff, and they think that they promised a certain type of life and promised certain type of things in Islam when they're not. And then when it don't happen, oh, Islam ain't real. This Quran ain't real. It ain't making my headaches go away. I got the flu. I got pneumonia real bad. And the Quran ain't taking it away. This ain't real. The Quran ain't real. So, we need to get rid of a lot of that fake stuff. But I remember I did it that one time. I put my head on, I laid my head on it. All type of stuff. But then I attributed it, okay, I had a bad hangover. So I remember I just had a regular headache a little later on down the line. And I started trying to read the Quran. Like one of them headaches where you got to turn all the lights off. You know what I'm saying? I'm still a teenager. I'm 17, 18 years old. I'm in a room complete dark, so my headache could go away. Aspirin ain't nothing helping me. I'm trying to read the Quran, headache ain't going nowhere. And I knew right then after that second time, that's foolishness. Alhamdulillah, I still believed in the Quran, but that's what I say, man. Listen to that old gang, Vice Lord, Peace Stone, Four Corner Hustler type Islam. And like I say, some people filter with all this mystical stuff, and then when it's not happening, they leave Islam instead of grasping onto real Islam and doing tadabbur and doing different things like reciting al-Fatiha. Now there is certain things, where it's the cure for the diseases in the heart, but it ain't like, reading the Quran gonna cure cancer. You take the Quran and hold it on your chest and rub your body with it, and it'll make your cancer go away. That's not the diseases and stuff it's talking about it's a cure for. That's some people who couldn't understand, or they was hustling and had some people falling up under them, and they misleading the people. But assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.